Well, hello everybody. Obviously, Jonathan Wells back over here with yet another top producer interview, and we've got Carly Hine.
Yes. Hi, I'm Carly Hine, still known in the real estate world as Carly Trinley.
Yeah.
Making that transition. But thank you for having me on, and excited to share some insight.
Absolutely. Yeah, we go pretty far back, don't we?
Yeah, you were one of my first lenders I used when I was originally back with Keller Williams when my first year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy because I got introduced to you through the team that you were working with at the time. And then, yeah, we obviously hit it off. You know, had a couple great transactions there with some of your friends and things of that nature. And then got to know your now husband, Jason. Super cool dude. Definitely don't want to get in a fight with him, though. So, yeah, it's been a fun time. And then, recent news, right? Like, you just had a baby.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's that going?
Mom life is amazing. It's honestly everything I hoped and dreamed it would be. It does completely change your whole life.
Yeah.
And just being a mom, like at first I was like, oh yeah, I'm like a hustler and whatever. And, he comes first now, which is awesome. And to be growing such an awesome little family that Jason and I have with our dog too, where I am a fur mom. I have a dog, Dixie. She's a golden.
That's awesome.
And it's just been really cool to just see us both step up as parents and just the changes and everything we've been making. But also too, just fitting him into we both have really crazy schedules.
Oh, yeah.
Being a police officer, him working 7 days a week, sometimes 6, sometimes he gets 2 days off. With me, it's, you never know. Our family's really supportive and they really back us up and are there if I need them to. A lot of my clients have been really understanding and amazing as well too, of like, can't really drop everything at that moment. Some people don't quite understand just yet that I can't just do that.
Right. Yep.
But for the most part, everyone's been really understanding and caring about, having a new baby. Just have been enjoying it, honestly.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool though. Yeah, I mean, especially with you guys' crazy schedule. I mean, we've been trying to get together for like the last 2 months.
Yeah.
It's really tough to put a date together,
Yeah, you're not the only one.
No, absolutely. Totally understand. Awesome. Well, yeah, so you're a real estate agent.
Yep.
You work over at, where do you work at now?
So now I am with Listing Leaders Northwest,
Okay.
A growing company. They started in Indiana. Kevin Hutnick is the original owner. And then our branch is run by Eric Hauselman and Gina Zarabo.
Yep.
And they are now opening, which we do have 2 offices in Illinois. Got some new agents in Illinois.
Congratulations.
So I'm dual licensed in Illinois and Indiana. There's a lot of agents in our office that do that as well too. But yeah, it's a really, really great company and small but mighty and growing bigger and bigger by the day, which is awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Yeah, 100%. So as a real estate agent, right, you've been practicing for a number of years.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned through actually working in the real estate industry?
The biggest thing that I have learned is to stay true to myself and my morals. In this industry, it can be very, very tricky when you're trying to navigate different scenarios, different customers, different companies. And for a while, I kind of molded myself into someone I wasn't. And it kind of came out a little bit negatively. And it just wasn't who I was as a person. And I could see it was kind of affecting my business and honestly my relationships with even friends and family. And I was, starting to choose work over my family, work over everything.
Right.
And I just started slowly kind of becoming unhappy. And I thought, if I just, work this much more, I'll be happier. And it's just finding that balance in life, just work life, family life, and then just also to take care of yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that was probably the biggest lesson, just to stay true to myself, because at the end of the day, like we are all independent brokers. Like nobody owes us anything. Nobody's going to sit there and pick you back up. Like you truly have to pick yourself back up. Now there's definitely a lot of really good support with your office and like where you're at. But I kind of felt pressured to change. earlier in my career.
Mhm.
And, I didn't really feel like I had correct guidance. I kind of started to figure and navigate it myself. There was a couple people along the way that really did help and really set that understanding of like finding what's best for me and what I'm true to.
Right, right.
Because at the end of the day, it's a people business, and if we're not who we truly are, people can read right through that
Oh,
and
of
pick up
course.
on it.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned
Yeah.
in navigating this industry.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense too, because like a lot of times I see, either in myself, my business, or other realtors, if there's always like the formulas or the scripts that you use to have success, right?
Yeah.
And while the basic fundamentals and the principles of that do work, you do have to put your own spin on it, right?
Exactly.
And you have to bring, do the activity in a way that is genuine to what you actually want to do, right? Because like you said, people can pick up on you being disingenuous,
Mhm.
right? And that would obviously affect, especially in our business where it's mostly, friends and family that are working with us, and or referrals from friends and family and past clients and things like that. It's really easy to damage relationships if you aren't going about it the right way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Awesome. So how do you obtain new business? Like what works for you, right?
Yeah, so I think that's like you saying that is really important, like what works for me, because I think there's a lot of agents out there that try to pick up and say, okay, what can I do in like every little pocket of trying to obtain new business? Where me, genuinely, I am horrible on the phone. I don't know what it is. I've done it. I make cold calls. I literally do it all the time,
Yeah.
but it's just so bad.
Right.
And in my opinion, it's probably not as bad as I think, but just me in general, like I'm, really great with actually connecting with people and networking online.
Sure.
So I've developed a really, really good social presence on social media. Did a couple videos, honestly just talking to people on LinkedIn, talking to people on Facebook, talking to people on Instagram. And I did listen to a podcast, so I realized that was my lane, was the, going on social media and checking things out. And then once I realized that that's where I was gaining a lot of momentum in business from, I was like, well, let's run with it. And then if I meet people out and about too, and if I just so happen to call someone, it's just adding to it.
Right.
And I think a lot of agents try way too hard to do everything at once.
Right.
So they're not honing in on their craft and that skill. And then they're like frustrating themselves by overworking themselves.
Yeah.
And so, for me personally, like it's definitely been just like the social media presence, and it just comes naturally to me. Like I love Canva is my best friend. And like the creativeness, I just have so much fun like posting out, and so many people like buy these different companies that like do it for them. Do not do that. Do it yourself. Like make it you.
Yeah, of course.
Because I did do it once, and I was just like, some of them were okay, and it was nice to have that filler. And I get it. Like we're out and about, we're busy, like we don't have time to do this stuff. You can find like 20 minutes to make like a really nice piece, or like a couple different pieces that you can just post. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. But, yeah, for me personally, like it's, the online presence.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can dive into there. I think for the most part, a lot of, maybe, agents and lenders that are in the business, right? They might think, oh, well, I can outsource, posting on my social media, right? Or I can go outsource some of the content that I'm going to create. And at the end of the day, it like you said, it takes you maybe 20 minutes to put something together. And that also allows you to, like, one, understand how that stuff works, right? But also that you actually put out there what you want to put out there, instead of trusting somebody that you probably, speaking for myself here, probably didn't give them great communication on what you wanted to post anyways.
Yeah.
So whatever they send you, you're like, well, now I have to redo this anyways.
Yeah.
And I've already wasted time and money waiting for them to get it over to me.
Right.
So you mentioned that you have a big social following, right? And that's where you do get a lot of your business. How, like, specifically, how do you market on social media? Are you like posting things? Are you liking and commenting on people's stuff? Are you in different groups? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so obviously right now with having a baby, I've kind of scaled back a lot of it. But when I was really busy last year, people were asking like, what is so different about you? And honestly, it's just commenting on people's stuff. and posting. I was posting I was trying to post every day.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, even if it wasn't totally real estate related, I just threw my picture on there, my listing leaders on there.
Right.
But was doing that, creating content with some videos, but also too just literally letting people know that I am doing business by, saying like, oh, going through this house, like showing, and
Yeah.
not obviously not like that, a little bit more professional. But also too, just anytime I had an under contract or anytime I had like a closing, like
Mm-hmm.
it was just people's like were like, you are doing so well, even though if I didn't feel like it, because of the content that I was able to show, like people were like, wow, like you're doing a lot of deals. So then people literally just started reaching out to me. I went into Facebook groups as well too. So I did actually get a couple of referral deals just from being in groups and talking to other agents from different states, which
That's
was kind
awesome.
of cool. Yeah.
That's super cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, and I remember that too. Like especially last year, like you're talking about. I mean, you were posting. It was like at least 3 or 4 times a week, at least, right?
Mhm.
At least that I
Yeah.
saw, and it was
Yeah.
probably more than that because I probably didn't see every single post that was on there. And it was literally under contract, offer accepted, closed. Whatever that you were able to post on there. And to your point, it gives you credibility because people want to work with people that know what they're doing,
Yep.
and the best way to communicate that is through social media.
Yep.
And so you're doing a lot of the things. I've talked to someone on Thursday about this, where they're talking about being seen before you're known,
Yep.
right? So obviously having a presence before you actually have the conversation, which is exactly what you were doing. And then also, there's all the touches that you can have indirectly by commenting or hearting on somebody's, Facebook post, right? Tim Pelton does a really good job of that. Like
He does.
I see every
Shout
single
out to Tim Pelton.
every single post from any realtor that I see online. Tim is always like the first one to heart
Yep.
it and then put a comment on there.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, I was like that. I was just talking about this with one of my friends last night, who's in the industry, and I was like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like this guy is all over the place, you know. So yeah, no, that's awesome. So you're able to do that. I think for a lot of agents out there, utilizing that aspect of things, right? There's like the direct contact, in real estate, and then there's also the 30,000 foot view, right? And so you need both, but also when you have that 30,000 foot view or you're being seen before you're known, it allows for an easier time when you're connecting with somebody, as I'm sure you've seen in your business for sure.
Absolutely.
So what are some ideas that maybe agents could use if let's say they're not doing social media right now? What are some other avenues that you've had business either come to you or seen other agents have success in?
Yeah. Like I said, cold calling definitely works if that's up your alley. That's great. And honestly, as well too, I like to send postcards every holiday, or honestly, if there's just someone's birthday, like if you're able to keep up with that, obviously, if you have a lot of clients and it's a lot of touches, but even just a nice postcard, like I did one for Christmas, and then I did another one as well too. I want to say I did one in the spring. I think I did like an Easter card or something like that.
Nice.
And I sent it to all my clients and typed up a nice message, and then I signed my name.
There you go.
So again, it was something that didn't take super long, but also it just gave that nice little touch that I was thinking about my clients. And then I actually as well too, to get good referral business as well, is every 1 year anniversary I get a little gift, a little something for my clients that
super cool.
close, and I say, hey, happy 1 year, and super glad that you guys have been happy in this home. And again, it just adds that extra flair. And I've gotten like a couple referrals actually from just doing that and following up with them a year later.
That's awesome.
And keeping in contact with them. And so, I mean, there's a lot that you can do, because honestly, like you want that referral business because those people already know how you operate. If you're newer, definitely sending a card to your family members and saying, hey, I'm in the real estate business. And for me personally, another thing that really works, that I've seen with other people too, is just honestly out and about in the market. For some reason, like real estate always would come up and I'd be like, oh, funny, I'm a real estate agent. And I would just talk to them and just have a normal conversation. And then that usually leads as well too to me helping them with business, or somebody that they know needs a real estate agent as well too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And I think that, like you said, there's plenty of different ways that you can get business in real estate, right?
Yeah.
So you finding out what's really true to you and to your style.
Yeah.
And I feel you too on that whole, like, when you go out in public and then randomly you have conversations. It literally, like, I have to be on such good behavior now. It's so unfortunate. Um,
Have a baby. That'll
absolutely
change.
not.
That'll change things for you.
Not anytime soon. Eventually, maybe, but no. So, like, it depends on, like, your market too, right? So, where I live and work in Crown Point, Indiana, like, I'm not kidding. I cannot go to any restaurant around here without running into somebody that either I know or they, like, know me, right? Like, I went to Best Buy to go grab the tripod for this yesterday, right? I was checking out and the guy, like, scans or he's like, hey, can I get your number for, like, the rewards or whatever? My number and my name pops up and he's like, Jonathan Wells, like, you did my loan 2 years ago. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
Literally was a past client that I didn't ever meet him because it was during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I would have recognized him, obviously, if I had, like, had a personal interaction with him.
Right.
But the most I saw was his driver's license. So, so we were talking for like 10 minutes or whatever afterwards. And I was like, man, I really have to be on my best behavior anywhere I go. This is crazy. So,
yeah, you're a walking billboard for your business, man.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but no, I'm kidding. So, so what are some, like, how did you find out that social media was your outlet, right? And how do you think other agents could find out what their, like, best outlet is for business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, like, you just know everyone. I don't know why or how that happens, but you just do. I have family members as well too that know a lot of people in many different areas. So I mean, I already had a big presence on social media. Like, I had over 1,000 friends on Facebook just from, like, youth until now.
Right.
So I knew that reaching a lot of people and that people seeing me do work, because where I'm from too, like, if you call someone about business, people are kind of turned off by that.
Sure.
And, I'm from a blue collared area. So, like, people are like, what are you trying to take from me? I'm like, I'm just trying to, like, help you do business, but okay.
Right.
So I think that might just be something, like, where I'm from. It's like, you just don't ask people for business. You show people you're doing business, and then people will, like, come to you.
Right.
So I knew that that was something that I was going to have to do with my network, in my sphere. And literally, like, my aunts and uncles are like, you're doing so good. And it's like, my cousin bought a house with another agent, or didn't buy a house with an agent. And it's just, like, kind of funny, because it's like, you think these people are going to support you. But, what I realized is they do support me in a way. They share all my posts. They're constantly following up and making sure, like, hey, how's everything going? Like, you're killing it. And, so even though, like, in the ways that you think that they're going to support you, like, that's what I've realized is, like, they have absolutely zero problem sharing my posts and, like, telling people how amazing I am. So I was like, all right, like, this is what's going to work for me. It's like, maybe not calling my family and asking them, hey, do you know anyone that's, like, looking?
Right.
They just see that I'm out there doing the thing, and then they're like, all right, like, hey, by the way, my niece does real estate. That's literally actually how it's happened. So, like, the aunts and uncles, when I first originally got into business and decided to be a real estate agent, I, like, asked, like, oh, do you know anyone? They're like, oh, no. And then literally, as I'm going and as I'm just working it out there, I've gotten referrals from them, from telling somebody, like, oh, my niece is doing a great job, like, let's send her this referral. And it's just been really cool. And not all of them didn't support me in the beginning, I'm sure, as well too. They just actually truly didn't have people.
Right.
But I think that's also, like, the biggest thing, because that's, like, a new agent getting started. Like, you first want to go to your friends and family.
Oh,
and
of course.
You get, like, discouraged if they don't support you immediately.
Right.
Just know, like, give them the opportunity to support you as well too. So that's how I found that, navigated that, like, okay, like, social media is my thing. This is what I'm really getting, like, that's where I'm getting a lot of my business from. Like, I've been doing cold calling and, like, on and off, and don't love it. I don't feel like I'm really getting much from it.
Right.
I get it from being in front of people, showing them I'm a genuine person, and then also too just letting them see it on social media. So that's how I was able to kind of navigate and understand, like, that is what truly worked best for me.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that, as a new, like, if a new real estate agent's coming in, or maybe someone who's even been in the business for a couple of years and wants to reinvent themselves a little bit, right? Yeah. You have to try a lot of different things, and really find out what's the most comfortable for you and what's the most comfortable for your clients, right? So, for example, like, obviously, that I do a lot more of the calls and, like, the visits and things like that, right? And so I realized, like, this year, I was calling some of my agents and I'm like, man, like, no one's picking up the phone anymore. So I'm like, something's going wrong, right? And then I was, like, talking to some of the agents that I trusted a little bit more, and, like, okay, like, hey, like, I'm not having as much pull through rate with my calls and stuff like that. Like, am I slipping on what I'm saying? Like, what's going on there? And they're like, no, dude, like, we just don't want to talk on the phone all the time, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, that works. And then text messaging, I'm getting a little bit better at now, like sending a text, which honestly is easier anyways, right?
Yeah, right.
And then growing the social media presence and stuff like that, doing stuff like this, where it's not just the same thing over and over again, right? And I think that as, you know, even someone that's been in the business for a couple of years, like it's more than okay to reinvent yourself and go through, you know, a changing environment, right?
Right.
So yeah, no, I think that's awesome that what you're doing with that. Let's say that someone gets their real estate license tomorrow, right? How did you get your first couple of deals in the business? I know you're talking about friends and family and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then like, what's a realistic expectation for someone to set, right? Because I feel like a lot of people that get their real estate license, they have, you know, this idea that they're going to go and close a crap ton of homes their first year.
Yeah.
And then that potentially leads to discouragement on
Yeah.
their side and potentially an early retirement on that career, right?
Yeah.
So walk through like goals, or walk through like what's realistic, what's some goal setting things you can do for your first year, things like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, just personally, based off of what I did, is I just let people know I was in real estate. That was super uncomfortable for me. Friends and family, like I decided and enrolled in like a class that I was able to make calls on. And so realistically, like just stay in your lane is the number one thing. Don't compare yourself to a top producer or even a new agent that you have no idea what their network like or who they were talking to. Like,
Right.
and also like do not watch Selling Sunset or anything like that. It's just not realistic. What's realistic is just hustle. Just get out there, and like when you're continuing to be consistent and persistent, that's when things kind of start falling into line. My first year, I closed 5 deals,
Okay.
and they were all friends and family.
Yep.
And it just so happened that I was at the years of when my friends were buying their first homes. So that worked out really well for me. And so that, again, is 5 a lot? No. But for me, I was like, wow, I got a couple of W's under my belt. I had some friends I helped out. And, you know, it was good. They were good guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And so, you know, even if it's not, so don't sit there and say like, you know, get discouraged or worry about like, oh, I need to close, or oh my gosh, real estate's gonna be so easy, because it's really truly not easy. It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of like navigating and curves that you have to kind of go through to really do the best you can do. Just do the best that you can do for your clients, and honestly, just try every single avenue, because it took me a little bit to do the cold calling, and it took me a little bit to really get myself out there. And I feel like if I probably would have done that sooner, I might have had maybe a few more closings my first year.
Sure.
But I stayed in my lane, and I just made sure that, you know, what I was doing worked for me. And I got a lot of advice from so many different people, but I really just truly listened to my coach and my one person that like was teaching me and walking me through the steps. And then as I kind of understood what I was doing that first year, I started talking to you, I started talking to my attorneys, and I started asking questions, and I started trying to figure out how I could best service my clients.
Right.
And like be the best agent, because I want people to be like, you know, this is really nerve-wracking, or my son's buying his first house and he's really nervous, and like I want them to think of me and think of like how I made them feel, and know that I know she's going to take care of them.
Right, of course, absolutely. And that's and I love that too. So what I'm hearing from you then is, for the first year, right? Not that you shouldn't go into anything without any goals, right? Because I feel like you should always plan for something and have something that you're striving towards. But understand that you're starting a whole new thing, right? And really, the first year, honestly, I think the first really 3 years, to be completely honest with you, is essentially branding, letting people know that you're in real estate, and then also being consistent enough that people understand that you're going to stay in real estate for a while. Because we all know people that get their license and they're out of the business within a year, right? And that happens to, I think it's like 90% of agents quit in the first 3 years, right? So after year 3, people are like, okay, like you're actually going to be around for a while, you know? And then it might not be something that they actively think about, but they probably subconsciously think about that, right? And then also honing in and refining your craft, getting knowledge so you can educate your client. And then like you were talking about too, having systems and structures in your business to give that great client experience so that they not only appreciate what you did for them, but they trust you enough to allow you to help out someone that they're close to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I love all those things.
Yeah, I would just say just don't be afraid to make mistakes. Like that was my biggest fear, was like I was going to cost someone thousands of dollars, and have that a little bit so that you are, doing your due diligence.
Oh yeah,
And
of
like,
course.
but also ask questions to other people. There's probably going to be plenty of people in your office that are willing to help. And even if you don't find anyone in your office willing to help, won't say anything, but go ask, one of your lenders or someone that
Yeah.
you're working closely with that
Mhm.
like can help you and
Oh, yeah.
guide you into, understanding and navigating. Because let's be honest, real estate classes do not prepare you for the real estate world
No,
at
not at
all.
all. Not at all.
You literally are like, oh, I'm gonna do so great, and then you get in and you're like, how do I write a contract?
Yep, exactly.
What am I doing? So don't have the fear to make those little mistakes, because I've made plenty.
Right.
I've owned, mistakes that I've made. I've owned a lot of things that, have happened, but there was never anything detrimental. But I had to understand also too, to just like watch how I was saying things to clients, and just like really make sure they understood, like, I'm here for you, but like at the end of the day, like, this is your decision.
Right, right. Yeah, of course.
So
Well, and that's the other thing too, like it's funny because like a lot of people think about real estate in different ways, right? But I know how you and I both agree on this. We both practice this in our daily, actions with our clients. Obviously, we're the professionals, right? So we know typically what is in the client's best interest because they'll tell us what they want, and then we know what the options are. We've seen that scenario 1,000 times or something similar to it, and we know the outcome. We can help them get the outcome that they want based on the circumstances, right? However, we still give them a couple of different options, educate them on what it is that realistically is going to be the thing that works, right? And then say, it's still your choice though. Like, you can do whatever you want. However, like, if you want this house, you need to offer this, right? Now, you can offer less if you want to, but you're probably not going to get it, right? I know we can get it if we do this. But if you want to roll the dice for $2,000 less, we can go here, right?
Exactly.
And then on my side, with the loan options and things like that, it's the same thing, right? So it's it's having the professionalism to give them the advice that they need, but also allowing them to, like, you're not forcing them to do something, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I love it for sure. Awesome. Well, is there anything you would like to add?
I think just biggest thing, like I said, just don't hold yourself back. Stay in your lane, and honestly, just find a group of people that you can really work with and trust. Because everyone, like you said, everyone operates so differently in the real estate market. And I mean, there's a lot of agents out there that kind of just use this as a hobby. There's a lot of agents out there that really want to help people. There's a lot of agents out there that just are hoping to become rich in real estate.
Right.
Which, like, some do, sure. But, I think the biggest thing is, like I said, just know who you are and continue to build off of that. And when things don't go your way and things happen, like, they're going to happen. But at the end of the day, just, stick to who you are, be true to you. And honestly, if you do that and you're consistent and persistent, like, you can be successful in real estate.
Yeah, I love that. Last question I got for you. What's the reality of the current market that we're in?
The reality of the current market we are in is, honestly, like, I wanted you to ask this and bring this up because I have just had crazy people, like crazy clients, just like unrealistic, like, expectations, or just crazy sayings that, like, the reality of the market of what's happening right now is you have to understand what's happening in the global economy as well too. You can't just be like,
Right.
America, it's all
Right.
America, and I'm like, that's not, like, okay. Let's just take a step back. What's happening right now is there is no crystal ball.
Right.
We couldn't, like, everyone that has come to me has been like, I gotta sell my house, and if I sell my house, I'll get the highest price I'll ever get. But then if I go buy, I'm paying top dollar. I was like, so what do you think happened, like, prior to that? Like, it's the same. What people need to understand is it's all in the same parameters of the balance
Right.
of low interest rates,
Right.
but what we're experiencing right now are high interest rates, high prices
Right.
because of our inventory shortage. And
Right.
it has not changed.
Right.
And it's not going to change.
No, not at all.
And that is what people need to realize, is that's just something that is the huge indicator of why we are at where we are at.
Right.
People are like, oh, this house, I can't believe that it's this price. And it's like, well, if we look at the comps and we look at the areas
Right.
of why they are selling for what they're selling, and because that inventory is still so low, they can get away with that.
Right, of
Are we
course.
seeing some adjustments? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's just the economy right now is just, it's tough. It
Yeah,
is
of course.
tough. Like, we'll be honest, like, it's tough. But
Oh,
is
yeah.
it doable? Yeah, absolutely. You can, purchase a house, and absolutely you can still, find ways to navigate and figure out how, you can make it work for your family.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing about this current market is, people are still buying, people are still moving, people need to live in homes.
Right.
So work with a professional, stop utilizing Zillow and thinking that you know everything.
Right.
Because we are here because we know all of the backgrounds, we know all the ins and outs, we know how we can get you safely into a property.
Right.
Versus you purchasing something or figuring out how to try to do it on yourself. Like, would
Right.
you go to a doctor and they prescribe you something and you say, you know what, I saw on WebMD
Right.
that I should do this because I have this?
Yeah.
Or would you listen to your doctor?
Yeah, actually, Doc, I have anxiety. I need that Xanax real quick.
And that's kind of how I lead it with people. Is like, would you do this? Like, would
Right,
you
right.
take these steps? And like, I understand. Like, that's the beautiful thing about the web is like
Right.
it has created so much knowledge.
Of course.
You have to be so careful about who you're getting that knowledge from.
Right, of course.
Because there's so many people that are just flat wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I was literally just talking about this yesterday with someone on the podcast, and we were talking about that exactly, like the TikTok advice and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much goofy information out there. But it's an interesting point you bring up, too, about the market, right? Like, and this happens literally every time. There's a couple clients that I'm sure we can both think of that, when interest rates are super low, right? We were looking at helping them get into a home, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to pay, $10,000 over what the home is worth because, that's just me wasting money, right?
Yeah.
Which I understand.
Right.
It makes sense, right? So it's like, okay, no worries. We'll try, we'll see if the market softens, because we had that anticipation the market was going to soften, as far as, home buyers out there looking at stuff so they could get a better deal on it, right?
Right.
Well, winter rolls around of that year, and then we're looking at this again, and they can actually find something that they want. They're like, oh, well, now interest rates are a little bit higher, right? So my payment's going to be a little bit higher. Now it's not as affordable. I don't know if I want to do this, right? And they had a home to sell and everything else, right? So they're like, all right, cool. And then we hit them up a couple months later, and they're like, hey, like interest rates are really high right now. I can still get top dollar for my house, but I still have to pay top dollar for the next place. And so the reality is for real estate agents that there are some clients that that's just not going to happen until they're absolutely ready, right? They're always going to have an excuse until they're literally bursting at the seams at their house and they have to move, right? But also, too, with the clients on their side, like understand that if you're like, let's say you own a home and you're looking to move into the next one, right? And you're like, oh, I don't want to pay this price for this home because that's just outrageous, right?
Right.
Meanwhile, on their end, they're like, well, I'm going to sell my house and get the most I can for it, right? And I'm going to get $50,000 more than what I thought I could get for my house. That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways.
Exactly.
And let's say the market did crash, which again, I don't think either of us believe that it's going to. There's way too much economic data trending towards.
It is not going to crash, everyone.
Exactly. There's way too much data proving that the housing market's going to continue going strong. But if it did, right? Well, then, yeah, you can get that house for, let's say $100,000 less, which in reality, if the market did crash, probably wouldn't be $100,000 off that house, right?
Correct.
Might be maybe 10 to 20, right? Which is nothing. So let's say that house went down by $100,000. Well, what do you think is going to happen to your home value, right? And now you can't get out. You might not be able to get out from under it now, right? And so that's really where, a lot of people, I think, are not that they're like super short-sighted, but they don't maybe understand the full picture, right?
100%. I think people are uneducated in that
Right.
sense of like they think they have an understanding, and there are a lot of smart people out there that do
Oh, of
have that
course.
understanding, and
Yeah.
they're like, it's not the best time for me, and I'm like, winner. That's exactly the correct
Right,
answer.
right.
Is when is it ready for? When are you ready to move?
Right.
When are you wanting to move?
Right.
Don't try to play this monopoly game of like, oh, like, you know, this is the perfect time.
Mhm.
No one knew COVID was going to happen when it happened.
Right, right.
Like, we had no predictors, no indicators.
Right.
Like, it just happened.
Mhm.
So that's why, and then people always have that like buyer's remorse or whatever about
Right.
stuff where you're like, no, like you know, I mean, we almost did it, and
Mhm.
I'm a real estate agent.
Right, right.
You know, I almost like didn't buy the house that we are in, and you know, we are so happy where we're at.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we love it, and we're exactly where we want to be, and you just have to remember that it's a very emotional state that like it's a very just emotional industry just as in a
Right.
whole. um, so I think it's really, really important that like consumers stay really close to their professionals, ask questions. I have people who like have never bought from me or anything. Honestly, just talk to me and ask questions.
Yeah.
And you know, I tell them like this is what we're seeing because I'm linked up and close to my professionals, like my lenders, all the economists that are telling me what's going on because
Right.
I know I'm not. But I've seen it enough. I've seen it enough that I can have an understanding of like, you know, what is truth and what's maybe not really truth, and
Right,
you know,
right.
that's kind of just out there. And you know, I just have this, you know, example that a client of mine was like, this house says it's active on Zillow, and I looked it up on you know, our MLS system that is, you know, constantly getting back up, constantly being worked on 24 hours of the day. And I look it up, I'm like, yeah, no, it's contingent. She's like, but it says on Zillow. And I'm like, so I think we're learning here now that Zillow
Right. Doesn't always have the
isn't
most.
always having the best information.
Right, exactly.
And so, you know, I told her, I said, I pay for, you know, having this system, and it's
Right.
consistently, but again, a lot of people don't see that and understand that unless you tell them.
Right,
So
right.
it's just getting the consumer to be educated and understand. So, you know, I think my biggest advice for like newer agents, if you do have some pushback and you have some people coming back to say, hey, like, I understand you hired me as a professional.
Right.
At the end of the day, you know, we don't get paid unless we actually help you find your home
Right,
and
of
close
course.
the deal.
Right, right.
Same thing with selling your home and close the deal.
Right.
So when you get that pushback from like where you want to list or even offering something, just say, you know, why would I ever advise you something that's not going to lead you into the home that you want to be in or lead you to selling your house?
Right.
You know, I have an incentive to make sure I am doing my due diligence and doing the best job that I possibly can for you.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. Absolutely. And like you said, taking the reins, you know, and at the end of the day, like if you are the one that's in control of that transaction as the real estate agent, like that's when you know that you can be a successful transaction because you know what your clients want and you're going to help them get that. And a lot of times people sometimes get in their own way, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you're there to help make sure that they don't, you know, end up wiping out, right? So
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you hopping on here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. We can definitely do it again whenever you want. And yeah, we'll wrap it up here. But seriously, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.